Good evening everyone. Welcome to the Mobile Applications Development lecture series. This is a continuation of our application development lecture series, wherein today we will be discussing about the components of Android application. From past almost 6-7 classes, we have been working on the application development just to get in touch with your Android skills, where how exactly an Android application looks like, how do we develop it, whether other aspects. So in the previous classes, we have learned how to create a project, how to develop a small Android application, where we started with a hello world application, then on clicking on a button, the refreshing, then a simple calculator, then we went on to a complex calculator, then we discussed about something related to intents. So this is the overall picture of a previous class, was to give you an idea about how exactly an Android application looks like. It is just to get introduced to your application. So now we will be going through the theoretical aspects of how an Android application is built, what are all the different components involved, or the building blocks of Android applications. So this is a very important class for you all with the theoretical aspects to know about the architectural design of every application. So if you consider, if you're developing an home, then you'll be having an home or a house or a building, whichever you're doing it, you'll have a blueprint. In a blueprint, you will be clearly specifying how exactly the building blocks looks like, which means you will be first going on for a clear blueprint of your building with the way, how exactly the size of a wall, what exactly the strength of a rod, everything. When you start working out, it will be built on a complete what we call it as the structure which we laid. We give, this is where kitchen should come, this is where bedroom should come. So we'll have a complete building blocks. So the building blocks gives you, it will hold the complete structure of the building. If you consider from a small home to the Burj Khalifa, everything is built, the basic structure has to be very strong. The basic building blocks has to be strong. So base has to be very strong. So this is the reason why we are discussing about Android basic components. So it is very deep. We have been developing very application and activity we have developed. So in an intent, an activity is linked to another intent. We have looked into it. So all these things we have developed it, but what are the building blocks of an activity? What are the building blocks? So this is where we are going to look into it for today's class. So let's begin today's class. What are the fundamentals we have to look into it? The fundamentals goes with Android app lives its own world, which means as we live in our own world, every application has its own structure. So this is what it means. And then application can make use of other apps, information sharing, moving between apps. So every application have many activities. One application can talk to another application, which means one building block can talk to another building block. How exactly? They will be seeing it over there. And we'll be looking into the various building components. The building blocks components or the Android components will be looking into it. And if you remember, when we developed our application, we went through the manifest file. Every application will have a manifest file. Why do we need it? So that is the file which will define you what are all the components you have used it in your application. So either it could be how many activities, which are the references you are maintaining it. All those references are kept in our manifest file. So here whatever the building blocks will be using it, all the components will be getting registered onto your manifest file. So with this, let's begin. What are all the different components of Android application? This we call it as a basic components. There are 4 components. The first one is the activity. The second one is services. The third one is broadcast receiver. and the fourth one is content provider. These are the four building blocks of Android application, or we can call it as components of Android application. This is very important. Every application has been built based on these four components. So there cannot be any other application without this. There cannot be an application without this. For an example, if I have to say, if you are developing an application of a calculator, it will definitely have activity because you need a UI. So without an UI, you cannot develop a calculator because you require an user interface to interact. So that is one. Consider you are developing something backend, something called as services, which doesn't have a UI. So even that is also an application that can be built, which means a services are nothing but which does not have UI. So it runs on the background. Services usual because many of our OS, the Android OS runs at the backend. Every time you cannot give a new UI for it. So many processes will be running. Example, a memory management application, a resource management application, a small processes which will be running behind. Likewise, if you can, a very simple example I'll give you. We have been using our Android phones for quite some time, and if you think we have something called as notifications. Even the application is, if the application is not running, the notifications comes, which means an application can be developed which is at the back end. And another very simple example, if I have to give you, the messaging app, where we create messages, where we receive messages. So this messaging app, it runs at the behind, always it runs at the back end. Either you close, you don't close, however you do it, but it will be running at the back end. So this, the calling process, the contacts or the messages. So when you receive a message, it will be stored somewhere, which means it has to be received at the back end. The UI is not up, but when you click on a messaging app, the UI comes up and shows you all the messages, which means messaging app was running at the background. Even if it is closed, it will be running at the background. So we can call a messaging app as two things. It has an interface as well as without interface also it runs at the background. So this is just to start with. The other one was the broadcast receiver. If you remember, this is a broadcast receiver. Broadcast receiver means, say an example, with an structure, I'll give you an example with that. Broadcast receiver. In detail, we will be learning it. But to go ahead, we need to know how exactly what do you mean by a broadcast receiver. Say example, there are many applications. Nowadays, everything is connected to the internet. And one application wants to talk to another application. Very simple if I have to say. One application wants to talk to another application. Example, let's take a WhatsApp. WhatsApp application makes use of the contacts which are there in your mobile. Contacts are maintained by one application and WhatsApp is another application. Now WhatsApp can access the contacts. So how exactly? It is through the broadcast. It raises a request telling that I want information about contacts. So contacts application comes into picture and it says I have the information for you. You can take it. So it receives the information and gives back what it requires. So this process we call it as broadcast receiver. Say example, you have a WhatsApp which we are working, and then we have a contacts, or else we have a messaging app. All these are applications. Now all these applications can talk to each other. They can talk by making use of broadcast receiver mechanism. It's a mechanism. It is been built based on that, which means an application can broadcast its contents, and whoever wants it, they can receive it. Just very similar to our Air India or the FM which we listen. So they broadcast it and we all receive it. So whereas in FM it's a one directional, whereas here it is a two directional. So you send, I want this information, who is having it, and it will be sent, it will be broadcasted. And all these applications which are active, they will be going through, hey, do I have this information? Let me give it. They'll accept it. They'll be keep on waiting for the broadcast messages. So whichever application wants it, it will take that and it will act upon it. So this is why we need this, because applications have to talk, have to communicate each other. So based on what? A broadcast receiver mechanism. So receiving broadcasts from apps and system services, very important. Many times system services also broadcast, or it requires some information which we have to provide. Usually the user defined applications, or else the applications developed by the users, will be accessing the system services. There could be an interrupt, there could be many other services which will be accessed by the application. So we need broadcast receiver mechanism. And at last we have another thing called as content provider, which is nothing but a database. We can relate it to a database. We can relate it to a database. What do you mean by that? Content provider is mainly meant to support you or provide you the required data, either in terms of an XML or in terms of a data set or in terms of a SQL database. So main purpose of any application, many of the applications requires a database. Very few applications doesn't require a content provider, but many of the applications, either it is a contacts, it requires a database, WhatsApp requires a database, messaging requires a database, and very few applications doesn't require a database, just like our calculator, alarm also requires it, a clock. So those kind of application doesn't require a database which you don't want to store there. So overall, if you consider any application built or any app will consist of either of these or all of this. But you cannot build an application with any one of them. Can you build without UI? Then it becomes service. So you can build an application only using either of these. It falls under any of these, which making use of either an activity or a service or a broadcast receiver or a content provider. But can you have in a single application, can we have all these four components? Yes, we can have. Yes, we can have. So with this knowledge, let's go ahead and look into each of these. Activities, we have learnt a lot on activities. What do you mean by an activity? An activity is a single UI or a window. That is what we have seen. So is it a class? Yes, it's a class. It's a class. Activity is a subclass we can call, because it has been inherited from app compact activity. So which means activity is nothing but a simple UI based window. That's all we can say. So which we have very well discussed about what do you mean by an activity. Now straight away we'll move on to a different, just to give an example, these are different activities. We have one activity, activity 2, activity 3, activity 4. So we can have multiple activities, and we have learnt even how to navigate from one activity to another activity. How do we navigate from one activity to another using which concept? Yes, the concept is intents. There are two types of intents. One is implicit intent and explicit intent. We remember, if you want to move out of the application, you want to get inside the application. If one activity to another activity, explicit intent. Whereas from one application to another application, if you want to, then implicit intent. So that is what we have learnt. So and then we have something called as activity stack, which we have to discuss. What do you mean by activity stack? Consider there are 4 activities. So these are all the activities which we have. Let's take an example. Let me take an example of activity. There are some 4 activities we'll consider. 3 activities. This is activity 1, this is activity 2, this is activity 3. So how many activities are there? There are 3 activities. Now you have a button here. From this activity you are moving on to the second activity using intents. Clicking on this button, we moved on to the second activity. From now, clicking on this button, you have moved on to the activity 3. Now you are in which activity? We are in the activity 3. Now if you are looking into it, we are in activity 3. Now do we maintain, can we come back from A3 to A1? Yes, if you remember, we use something called as back button. Back. So it comes back. So which means it maintains the previous activity reference. Where exactly it is maintaining the reference? That is, it is maintaining a stack, wherein in a stack, how exactly a stack looks like? Stack looks like this. The data structure stack maintains, it works in the principle of first in, last out, or last in, first out. So it's a works with that, wherein the first activity 1 will be here, activity 2, activity 3. This is nothing but activity stack. So whenever you're coming back, you'll take out the activity 3, then you take out the activity 2, then you take out the activity 1. So this is how it works. So our activities. Now with this is nothing but an activity stack. So with a sentence, if you have to say, Android keeps navigation history of activities using activity stack. The user has visited activity stack or the back stack, which we call. Pressing back displays the previous activity. True. User cannot go further than the last visit of home. So apart from this, you cannot go anywhere. If you click on back, then it will go to your home. So it will pause your application. So this is how it looks like. This is how it maintains. Stack activity 1, activity 2, 3. If you go back, if you come back key, then you go back to your activity 1. So with this picture, so this is nothing but your back stack or activity stack. Okay, this is a very important picture which you have to look into it. So this is nothing but activity life cycle. Everything has a life cycle. Services has a life cycle. Human beings have a life cycle, or any item in this world has a life cycle. It starts, it has to destroy. It is created and destroyed. Likewise, whenever you are creating an application, whenever it is executing, it goes through the different phases of its life cycle. So what is an activity life cycle? From the time it is created till it destroys, it goes through different phases of its application. Which means, what do you mean by that? So an application of this nature, this is a small application. It has a life cycle from the creation to the destroy. What are the different phases? Let's observe it. It has the different phases, we call it as created. Application is created, started, resumed, paused, stopped. These are different phases of an complete activity life cycle, which is very important to be remembered. We are discussing about the first component of Android application, that is activity. So that activity has a life cycle. This is how it looks like. So an it has got 5 phases of it. One is created, started, resumed, paused, or stopped. So first, application is created. You click a button. You click an application. You click an application to want to open it. You click it. What do you mean by that? It is created. It has been created. Now, after creation, what happens? It is started. So, what do you mean? What is the difference between created and started? Created doesn't have a UI. Started comes with a visibility for you. So, created, is just at the back end which has started the process, it has started the initialization, but nothing has come up in the front end. So when it comes to the started, which is nothing but it is in the visible phase of it. So then there are many other phases. You can resume started, you can work with it, so or else you can pause it. So you moved on from one application to another application, that we call it as a paused. The current application will be paused. So from the paused, you can either go to a first stated of the started application, or you can stop it. If you want to stop, you can kill the application. But when you stop it, is it there? It is not there. It is in the process of hidden. It is in the hidden process, which means it is not destroyed. Say when you have opened many applications, but you have gone behind, back button. But does it mean it is stopped? No, it is not stopped. It is stopped, but it is not gone away from the process, which means it is there in your RAM. It can come up at any point of time. But once you kill it, it is destroyed. It is removed from the RAM. So if you have to say, when you click on it, it is loaded onto the RAM. So on loading onto the RAM, but it is still not visible. From here, it is visible now. From here, the visibility, it can be worked or it can be paused. So it can get resumed or it can be paused. Again, it is a cycle which will work on based on the user, how he is working with it. Then once it is done, if you move on to the other application, the status becomes stopped. But it is still there in your RAM. If you want to remove from the RAM, it is with the action of destroy. So these are all the different phases of your life cycle, of an activity life cycle. But what do you mean by this? On create, on start, on resume, on start, on pause, on stop, on restart, on destroy. These are all the functions which will be called to perform, to enter into the different phases. So in a class, it has got these many functions. So if you want to get initialized, then you call a function called onCreate. You want to make it visible, call the function onStart. And when it is silent, you want to resume it, you can call onResume. You want to stop it, onStop. You want to kill it, you call the function onDestroy. These are the various functions which are available to access the different phases of the activity life cycle. Okay, what are the different phases? Resumed, paused, stopped, other states. So this is what with a text form we have given you. So it remains the same. What do you mean by resumed? App is in foreground and user can interact with it. So resume means we are working with it, the live, whichever the application, it is in the resume pause. What do you mean by paused? Partially obscure by another activity. So one activity to another activity you have moved on. So the previous activity is partially obscure, the previous activity. What do you mean by stopped? That particular activity is closed. The particular activity is closed. Other states, either it could be a destroy or onCreate. So these are the different functions which I was talking about: onCreate, onStart, on restart, on resume, on pause, on stop, on destroy. Very important functions. When we'll be developing an application based out of it, where we'll be accessing the different life cycle of these applications, which will be doing it in our lab session. Next, this will the same thing with a text form. onCreate is used to create the user interface. It will be visible only when this function gets called. It will be resumed. On pause, activity is still partially visible, but it is not in the foreground. On stop, activity is there, but it is in RAM, but it is not part of your, it is not killed. It is consuming your CPU time. So with that, we have covered our first component, that is activities. The second component is services, which means, what do you mean by service? Service is an application which runs at the background, which doesn't have the UI, the user interfaces. So that is what it means. A facility for the application to tell the system about something it wants to be doing in the background. What are the different kinds of applications we can see? Certain times we will be running the music player, which will be running at the background. Then fetching data from the internet, which will be downloading. Many downloads will happen at the back end, or the file transfers from one application to another application, which can go at the background. So many of these tasks can be run at the background using the services application. So services are also nothing but an application. So activity may be frozen when user moves to another activity. Service can go on in the background. So as we said, messaging app, you can close it, but it will be running at the background. So it is still running at the background. So services are nothing but that. So few more about services. Service is not a separate process or thread. It is not a separate process or a thread. It is an application. In the same application, it will be running with the same thread. It will be running with the same thread, but it is not a separate process. It provides two features. Tell the system that we want to do something in the background. It tells we want to do something in the background by calling start service. We will be developing an application which will be based out of services, which we called as intent services. The ability to expose functionality to other apps. So even other services can also be binded. That's the reason, the ability to expose functionality to other apps. Other services can also be launched or binded with us. So that is nothing but the services. So example, if you have to look into it, something is a simple application have been developed where it says start service, a service which is printing or telling that background services is running. When it stops service, it closes it. So it is just with a UI to tell you that there is no UI, but this is a separate service which has been started, which will be running at the background. This is just an example for you. So even this has a life cycle. Very similarly, call to start service, on create, on start command. So this is nothing but you have created the service, then on start command will start the service is running, and if you want to destroy, you have to call on destroy and service shutdown. So this is with the flowchart which we have given. So this is a basic service how exactly. So if you are doing it with the bind service, the similar process, not only thing is the addition is unbind. If you bind a service, you have to do a unbind. That's the only difference which you have to do. So how many phases are there? From the start service, the on create. So this is a function which will be called. So service is running. After calling on create, we'll be calling on start command. So this is where the actual service is started. It is running at the background. There is no visibility. And once everything is over, if you want to kill it, then you call on destroy function. The service will be destroyed or shut down. Everything happens at the back end, which we cannot identify that. So this is a different, this is how your life cycle of a service looks like. This is normal service and this is with the bind service. So the third one is the broadcast receiver. As we were discussing it, so there are many applications. Applications wants to talk to each other. They can talk to each other. Now, what do you mean by broadcast receiver? Broadcast receivers, a broadcast receiver is a component that does nothing but receive and react to broadcast announcements. So it makes an announcement, it receives. Any application which makes the announcement using the broadcast mechanism, to tell that I want certain information, and all other applications will be waiting and catching up those there. Receive and react to system services. So example, a simple example, if I have to say a battery low. Battery low meaning a battery is drying up, and it tells you that, it tells battery is drying up, and all other applications tells you, catches that announcement, or battery is getting low, so we have to save our positions. Some other apps, what other things will be using it? Receive and react to other apps broadcast announcements. You can also receive the other apps broadcast announcements if you want to provide something. Then initiate broadcasts to other apps. You can also initiate the broadcast, which means using this mechanism you can broadcast or you can receive. So both are possible. App is given fixed amount of time to react, which means a broadcast receiver, it cannot go infinite. Once you broadcast something, it has to be accepted within 10 seconds. That is how it works. A simple example if I have to say. So this is my broadcast receiver, your application. In your application one class, you have created my broadcast receiver. There you are written on receive. If any of the, say example, you are developing a messaging app. Once you receive a message, you need to give a notification. For that you have written on receive. So on receive is waiting to accept whenever there is an incoming message. Whenever there is incoming message, it tells you message received. So how do you achieve that? That is achieved using on receive function. So this is when if your application is developed, you will be developing a class called as my broadcast receiver. There you have a function called as on receive. In that receive part, you are going to receive that whenever the incoming message. So it will be inherited from broadcast receiver. So what happens? Some system service. In a system service, a message came. So it tells, my broadcast receiver tells, if there is a message, please let me know. Once the message comes, it gives and it is received by our application. So this is how broadcast receiver works. And the last one is content providers. Content providers, as we said, it is purely for the database purpose. Content providers means it is a content full of data which will be required by the application, wherein a different data set or data is required to process it, which means content providers are nothing but databases. An SQL database, or it could be an XML file, or it could be a text file, or it could be any other resource which gives you the data, a data set. So that is nothing but content provider. Using this content provider mechanism, we will be able to access the databases. Let's say a content provider makes a specific set of the applications data available to other applications, which means it can set of data which in the database gives you the information for other applications. Share data to other apps. That's the main purpose of a content provider. A database purpose is to share the data. Any app with appropriate permissions can read and write the data. Considering a database, if it has got an access, it can perform read and write operations. Many native databases are available via the content providers. For example, Contact Manager. Contact Manager, all our contacts are saved in database. All our WhatsApp messages saved in database. Which database? Initially it will be stored in the local mobile database. Later it will be uploaded into our server database. So everything is happening using content provider. If you want to access outside database, it could be a MySQL database, or it could be a SQL server, it could be a Firebase. Then you have to make use of this mechanism called as content provider to access the data from outside. Common interface for querying the data. So it provides you the common interface for all data, which means if you want to access any kind of data, either it is from a file system or from a SQL database or from a XML. So it is giving you the common interface to access either of the databases. So that is why it is very important to know a content provider. So about content provides the result of the query. So very simple, meaning you ask a query, you get the result. So as simple as that. So it works on the principle of ask a query, receive the answer. That's how a simple database also works. You execute a query, you get the data. So this is how it works. So with this, I would like to conclude today's talk or the lecture, wherein we have learnt about the main purpose of today's class is with respect to the Android components or basic building blocks of Android applications. Any application will have 4 building blocks: activity, services, broadcast receiver, or and content provider. So these are the 4 components of any application which will be built upon these 4 building blocks. With this, I am going to end today's session. The next class will be on the continuity of our lecture on the activities, the intents, and various stuffs. Thank you all.